Hey everyone.
Hello. Yay. It's so good to have everyone filtering in. Welcome to 2021, Liz. Here we are.
We're here. We made it.
We made it.
Um, and it's certainly been interesting.
Yes.
So many great people signing on, so many people who are just in a chat with me on the Stay Gold Collective. Hi again, and my mom. Let us know if where you're watching from in the chat, and let us know that you're here.
And questions too. Liz already gathered quite a few questions. I know I have gathered quite a few questions, but if you have any questions, we are more than happy to make sure we answer everything that is on your mind about pricing, raising your prices, and Vermont, Colorado, New York, we have some, Houston. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I'm calling in from Maine. I'm calling in from Southern Maine, about an hour north of Boston. And Liz is calling in from the beautiful, beautiful mountains.
Asheville, North Carolina. Is it cold up there?
You know, Liz, it is not cold. It is like 40 and kind of dreary, but I'll take it but you know what, Liz, I got a new winter coat for Christmas and it is a game changer. It is long and it is toasty. And I have a young son. I have a 2.5-year-old. So we're outside all the time at a slow toddler pace. So I'm loving this winter. It is like, I'm cozy, I'm warm, and we are just outside exploring.
That's so great. I'd also, as you guys are typing in the chat box, I'm guessing you're here because you struggled with pricing, but if there's anything specific you want to share with us about your struggles with pricing, we'd love to hear.
Oh, balmy 41. Yep, Northwest Pennsylvania. About balmy 41 here too, is what I would imagine.
Yeah, same here, actually.
So interesting. So there's a lot of twists and turns that we've had through 2020 and into 2021. So we wanted to start by letting you all know that we understand where you are. And we really know that we want to just congratulate you on arriving here in this room or even watching the replay, because talking about pricing, talking about money, especially in a year like this, is really, really challenging. So just know that by coming here today, by learning these 4 simple steps, even if you implement half of one of the steps, you are so much further ahead than you were when you didn't implement any of these steps. And it really is about giving yourself so much forgiveness. And I think that it's really easy, especially when it comes to financials and debt and materials and raising your prices, to just always have that lens over what you're learning, because it can be really easy to kind of go into a downward spiral of like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what Liz and Kathleen shared, and now I can't believe I didn't know it. But it really is the decisions you've made that have brought you to this moment, no matter what you're bringing into this room, this webinar, have gotten to you to where you are. So it's like having this lens of total forgiveness is really essential to get the most out of this conversation. Liz, do you have any thoughts or anything you wanted to add here?
Yeah, I've talked to hundreds of artists over the years, and so many struggle with pricing and struggle with confidence about pricing and confidence about selling in general. And the two really work together. Being confident about saying your prices leads to confidence in selling. So they both go hand in hand. And I'm just so passionate about artists truly valuing their work and getting paid what they deserve for their work. So I'm excited to be chatting about this topic.
Totally. And I also wanted to just kind of talk about the emotions, like as you just touched on, Liz, like the emotions around raising your prices, even charging, higher premium prices as an artist. And it's really easy, like from even like an emotional standpoint, to get into fight or flight. So if at any point in this conversation that we're having, you kind of have like that feeling of either it's a trauma response to fight or fly away, right? To kind of move out of the room. So if anything kind of comes up for you during this conversation, just know that it's super, super normal. And especially as Liz was saying, speaking your prices, not discounting, like some of these things that we'll be talking about today, you might kind of have a visceral response to. So we'll encourage you to continue to kind of like sink into your body. We'll do a little bit of like mindset work. This conversation today, I love to say, is kind of half mindset work, half affluent buyer psychology, and like a lot of practical tips. So just know that you're totally in the right place, and the emotions that can come up, especially on the journey. And I think, Liz, I don't know if you find this in the conversations you have with your students and clients, people think raising your prices will be this like linear journey. But really it's like a much more roller coaster type of experience of, you might raise your prices, then you might freak out that no one's buying, but then you might sell a big piece that replaced 10 other clients who you don't need to sell to anymore. So just know that it is very much like a roller coaster of emotions. So the more that you can attend master classes like what we're putting on, the more you can kind of turn into your community, they can help you navigate some of those ups and downs.
And some of this topic does take practice, and Linda's very grateful for the trigger warnings we're giving, because I know for a lot of artists that this is a challenging topic. We'll definitely be touching on custom piece pricing. Custom's such a big opportunity right now. And then Sherry, I just want to mention, saying that raising her prices actually is leading to selling more, which is something I see quite often.
Yes.
So some good thoughts to start us
I
off.
love that you brought that up, because it is so common. And I think that's the biggest, we'll talk kind of through some myths that come up, but I love that you like kicked us off with that incredible comment, because it is, when you can raise your prices, then sometimes you do start to sell more. And I have had clients of mine raise their prices, sell less, but make more money. So it really is like, how can we make sure, like the goal that you and I both have, Liz, is that designers and small retailers are getting more time to do what they want to do, whether that's on the bench, spending time with their families. And it really comes down to having enough inflow of income and being a good steward of it. And I wanted to just kind of touch on how to sell in 2021, because it is such an awkward, I don't know, awkward's not, that's an awkward word to choose. But it is
It's a little awkward.
It is awkward. Maybe awkward is the most right awkward word to choose. But when we can know our bigger why and really identify with the more income we make as artists, the more income we typically pay out to those who support us, be it I have a nanny, right? So the more money I make, the better I can pay my nanny, who's paid quite well. The more income you make, potentially, the more money you can pay your metalsmiths, the family run businesses that you work with in casting houses, the gem dealers that you work with. So really making sure that you have an understanding of yourself in like this larger ecosystem can give you that permission to keep showing up and keep selling, and know that people are definitely out there buying. Liz, what are you seeing? You're seeing
People are buying.
Yeah.
Huge custom game right now is something I'm seeing, like big custom projects happening. And then, yeah, people are buying. And we've talked about this before in our chats, in our many chats this year. And it hasn't changed. Like, yes, there's a lot of horrible things happening. Yes, there are people who are food insecure and struggling, but there are also people buying jewelry and people with excess wealth and excess income who are buying jewelry. And you selling your beautiful work of art and getting that money, you can donate and you can use that money in great ways. So that's kind of a nice mindset thought when you're trying to sell high-end pieces in a climate that feels very dark, I guess.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And it is like, you can sponsor a local charity, you can do a sponsor for a local restaurant. Like there's so many ways to get really creative. And we'll actually touch on this in one of our points, in one of our 4 simple ways to raise your prices. But it's understanding what we like to call your muse. It's kind of your ideal client, understanding what they care about and starting to partner. And you said, Liz, you have some clients who do an amazing job with this, where they have like a real philanthropic arm to their business as well.
Yes, definitely. Some of the artists I work with are so incredible, where they're essentially trying to sell jewelry so they have more income to donate to the causes they care about, which is just very cool.
And that's a really good trick to do for yourself, right? Like, and I think it's really easy to kind of feel, and we'll talk again, this is one of the points, but it's easy to feel like, who am I to sell right now? As you know, what Liz was saying, when people are food insecure, when people have lost their jobs. But when we can think of ourselves as this conduit through, people, like, also literally, this is a room full of alchemists. Like, you guys are literal alchemists, where you truly turn money and resources into actual gold. So when we can think that we are a conduit for investment, and then on the other end, and this will be another point, so we're giving you a little preview here in this preamble, but when you can truly know where that money is allocated towards and where it's going and who you're supporting, then you can make peace with it. And again, we had some trigger warnings at the beginning. It's not that it's a linear, oh, now Kathleen and Liz said this and now I feel totally at peace. But it gives you that permission to keep showing up and have something like outside of yourself that you're selling, quote unquote, because you are this beautiful conduit for money to get into the hands of other artists, your local community, and charities that you care about.
Yeah, and something else I want to mention that's really cool about scrolling through the names, a lot of people in this room, is that they tend to buy from other artists and other jewelry designers. And as they make more money, they support more people in their field, which is just, I think, so cool.
And like, it's like on a microcosm, jewelers buy more jewelry, but we also go to our local other small businesses. Do you know, like, it's like when we get money into the hands of artists, we do great things with it. So it really is, how can we make sure, like, this is your permission slip to make good money. This is your permission slip to continue to show up. And we'll talk through some of the mindset hurdles you might have, as well as some practical tips. But this is truly about giving you permission to continue to show up, to continue to charge really premium prices for your work, because there is an audience out there. And the e-commerce, we'll talk stats here for a moment. The luxury segment is on track to add $1.4 trillion in the next 10, or it currently is at $1.4 trillion globally. And what that means is it's luxury goods. So it's travel, cruises, fine dining, shopping, cars. And if we think of this year, how many of those items are out of the running right now? Quite a few. People aren't traveling in the same way. I don't know anyone who's taking cruises right now. I do think car sales are still up, but jewelry is having such an incredible moment. And I think that we've been able to kind of get back to the essence of jewelry and what it means to people. And it really is this beautiful way to truly connect with the person on the receiving end of the gift, or if you're self-purchasing, to commemorate a milestone, for example, or a really important anniversary or work date or something along those lines. So I think that we're in a tremendous moment for jewelry. I've also been reading, and this article comes from Money Week, but it talks about how we might be, you know, if history were to repeat itself, we could be headed into kind of a roaring 20s era where we are, you know, kind of stepping into some bigger spending when the sense of fear and foreboding go away, as it looked in the 20s. Youngsters partied like never before. So I'm kind of curious to see what will come on the back of, you know, the economic climate we're currently in. And then luxury shopping or online shopping for luxury goods has soared. So it really is, people are buying, more comfortable buying virtually. People are more used to conversing in this way. So I think there is, just from a climate perspective, a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, so much opportunity. I mean, jewelry has been such a comforting thing for people this past year. I feel like so many people have been adding talismans to their daily jewels, and thinking about jewelry kind of in a more meaningful way even than ever before. And people are looking for something to ground them, looking for something special, looking to mark milestones, because to your point, like, we can't quite celebrate them the way that we have in the past. So jewelry is huge. Art is huge. And selling online is more exciting than ever before because people are so much more comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a trend that's like not going to go away. So
no, it won't. So I just feel like this room and the community you have, Liz, is so well positioned to just really do well. And I think the more we can, as individuals, grapple with our own place and how we can know that it's okay to make good money, because when we do, we support charities we care deeply about, we support other small businesses, we support small farms, like whatever it is that gives you permission to keep showing up and charging these higher prices. So that's it kind of on the preamble. Should we get into the tips we have, Liz, or is there anything else you want to say? Let's get
No,
into it.
let's get into it. I'm excited. Again, ask questions as they come up and we'll get to them as it makes sense.
Perfect. So the first tip we have, or the first step, is to know your true cost of doing business. So this one is so important. It's really easy to charge wholesale prices when you move into the direct to collector space. And Liz, I know you had a story about this. Do you want to kind of touch on why you feel like it's so important for people to charge, like to know their true expenses?
Yeah, definitely. I find that artists are very quick to discount their higher price point product to get the sale, or just because they're simply not comfortable with the price of the piece. So getting comfortable with it, you're working in precious metals, whether you're working in sterling silver and using really incredible gemstones, or you're working in high carat gold. Um, you need to remember that that's very valuable. And then also a lot of artists tend to not, and we'll talk about this more, but value their time. I mean, the skills you have, the skills you've learned, you're handcrafting this piece. Like if you're handcrafting a chain, that's a really incredible endeavor that nobody else can do. Other people can't do. Not nobody else can do it. Other metalsmiths can do it, but your client can't do that. They can't make that piece for themselves. So you're using all these incredible materials, and then you're undervaluing yourself because you're afraid of the cost of a gold bangle because of the gold weight and what that number is. The fact that that might be over $10,000, that's okay. And I think that artists really deserve to make that money and to feel good and confident about those prices. And a lot of that comes from practice. And I always say I was really lucky to enter the industry working for Todd Reed because his prices were insane. I mean, I could certainly not afford $100,000 cuff or $1,000 ring for that matter at that time, or even now really. But I got really comfortable because he was so comfortable with his prices, because his staff and everyone in the company was so comfortable with his prices. You just get confident in selling it, and you get practiced in saying, oh yeah, I sold $100,000 cuff on Instagram last week. You know, it's just something you get used to, and it takes a lot of practice.
It takes so much practice. And I love that, Liz. And it kind of almost, let's kind of move to a lot of these tips you'll see kind of are very fluid. We've laid them out linearly. There are 4, but they all touch on each other. And you've brought us to point number 2, which is to get uncomfortable or get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think it's so, sometimes I refer to this as like divorcing your own bank account. And I think you just brought it up so beautifully, Liz. It's like, even if the first piece I sold, that was that very high price point, was a $32,000 custom engagement ring. And I remember that feeling of being on the other end, because this was in person. So being on the other side of that counter and being like, oh, that is your budget. Like, oh, okay, I was a sales staff, like I was on commission. So it's like, was so much money to me. But I had a mentor when I was planning my wedding. I had worked for her, and this was when I was first getting started in the jewelry industry. And she told me she had been one of the founding people of Whole Foods. So she had spent a lot of time around really, really affluent people. She was like, Kathleen, the key to selling high end is to know that it's just a different amount of zeros. So for Liz's example, right, if Liz is going to spend $1,000, she's going to think about it. Maybe she'll do it, but she'll probably, kind of contemplate it, and maybe even $100, right? Like we're all have a different amount of zeros in our bank account that is proportionally the same as someone spending $100,000. So the more we can really understand the psychology from that lens, right, that it's truly just a different amount of zeros. For someone to spend $10,000 on a bangle might be like you spending $100 on something you really care about, or maybe even $1,000. But the more that we can really, really understand that it is about that other person and it's not about our bank account, that's really where we need to land, to sell, and to truly raise our prices and sell at this higher price point.
Yeah. And I just want to say, going back to number 1, just like, it's so important to make sure your margins really compensate you. And a lot of questions that came in, which we might want to touch on now, is how much do you pay yourself? How much do we pay ourselves for our time? Because a lot of artists, I notice, don't have that worked into their equation, or they have it priced too low. And do you take into account if you've gone to GIA, or if you've taken extra classes in metalsmithing, or if you've gone to school to art? All of these things factor into your price. And you don't want to be running a business where you're selling to break even. We want you to be selling to make money.
Yeah. To hire housekeepers and in from your local community and pay them well, to buy the organic food from your, whatever your why is, we want you to be able to do that. And Liz, I love this question. I actually come at it backwards from most people, which is, I really want you to understand how much you need to make first. So it's like, what needs to land in your business bank account and what needs to land in your personal bank account for both what you have right now to maintain, as you're kind of saying, Liz, to break even, but then as you elevate, what needs to come in. So really, really knowing what those numbers are. And if you guys haven't read it, I highly recommend Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. And his whole concept is that we need to have this like bigger number that we then break down. So for jewelers, once you know how much you need to make for your business accounts and for your personal account, like, so it's really truly getting comfortable with these numbers, like how much, if your partner contributes, okay, this is how much I need to contribute for my household. I like to call it, these are the needs that I have. Like, these are the non-negotiables that we have. These are the wants that we have. And then these are the future expenses that we have. So you might even come up with 3 different numbers for both your personal life as well as your business. Like, this is the needs of my business. This is where I step into kind of the wants that I want to have in my business. And then this is like the future. This is the dream that we're headed towards. So you end up having 3 different tiers of numbers. So when you have that number and then you look at your pricing, you can start to understand how much you need to price at and how much you need to sell to make those numbers. And what I always teach and what I always recommend is that we really understand for each individual piece, what if we charge, say, $5,000 or $10,000 just to keep the math really easy, how much material went into that? How much labor went into that? How much design time went into that piece? What taxes do you have to pay for both sales and, or sales is typically paid, but what do you need to put aside for sales tax? But what do you need to set aside for your own business taxes? And then also, what is the owner's amount of money that you're taking out? And if you look at Michael Michalowicz's work, he starts to have you assign some percentages. So instead of paying yourself necessarily an hourly rate, what you're actually doing is when you sell a $10,000 piece, if you have your owner's draw, as he refers to it, or your salary at 35% of the pieces you're selling, because you've worked out all the math, you're getting $3,500 when you sell that piece. So it starts to kind of move in an interesting way. There's so many correlations between selling fine high-end jewelry and real estate. So I like to kind of start to play with the idea that as someone who's in business for yourself, you're always working on commission. So if you can start to kind of figure out what your commission rate is, so you're not necessarily having an hourly rate, but every time you're selling a piece, you're getting a chunk of that, and that's being set aside. And some of this is too much to necessarily go like in detail in. So I know there's a lot of like math and a lot of you guys are visual people, so I might have lost you along the way, but the main concept is that knowing your numbers first, like knowing how much your business needs and how much you need, and then starting to work backwards. So every time you're selling a piece, and this helps you so much with pricing confidence, because you might say, actually, if I sell a $1,500 piece, I, as the artist, get $400 from that piece, like that's all that I get. And that's not enough for me to run my family household the way it needs to be run, to run my personal life the way it needs to be run. So it's a really great exercise to start to do to truly understand your pricing.
I love the idea of just thinking about how much money you want to make from a piece versus giving yourself an hourly rate. Because I think everyone gets really stuck on what is that hourly rate? Bench jewelers in Colorado make $15 an hour or whatever. But I'm designing the piece too. I think I love that concept. It might make it easier for designers to kind of price in, which is interesting. So I love that. And then I'd love for you, this is again a little bit more specific, but a question I get a lot has to do with like custom design. And do you do a design fee, or do you mark up custom design in a bigger way? Do you mark up one of a kind pieces in a bigger way? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I love this question. And I truly think that it's going to be so individual. And that's like the overarching thing is like there's no cookie cutter formula because we all have different expenses. And I think sometimes that these calculators for like wholesale and markup and even custom can be so predatory. And I think sometimes that there's a someone benefits from you keeping your prices low. You know, it's like the trade in general benefits from designers keeping their prices low. So know that sometimes like if you're in the DC area, your prices have to be higher. Your cost of living is higher than someone who lives in Southern Maine, like I do, for example. If you're in New York City, your prices have to be higher. If you're Harry Winston, your prices are higher than someone who's in Middle America. So it's truly, this is the way the whole world works. And I feel sometimes that the way we're taught in art school, the way we're taught in kind of craft school is to do these hourly rates, is to work these formulas, but they'll always be so individualized. And that's why I actually go kind of from the back in of how much money do you need to make? Because if you can figure that out, you might need to charge $20,000 for a custom piece that someone could go elsewhere and get for $15,000. But because they love your vision, because they love what you bring, and we'll talk a little bit about like small details, like what affluent clients really care about, which isn't always more metal, more intricate design, bigger stones. So we'll talk about that in point 4. But it really can be around knowing your own prices first. But to kind of come back to the question you asked, Liz, which was deposits or percentages, what was it like kind of around, do I take a design deposit, for example?
Yeah, or like increase the piece of the price of the piece because it is custom, because it's something that you're creating from scratch essentially for a client. Do you price those higher?
100%. So this is a great question. Like in the methodology I teach, which again, this is like a snap, like it takes a year to learn it. So just know that like, if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, Kathleen is like, we have what is that emoji with the like mind blown emoji? Yeah. You're feeling that way right now. That's why we began this conversation with trigger warnings. This can be difficult. Just breathe, like feel your body, feel your feet on the floor. Cause I know this is like really fire hosey when Liz and I get together. But we kind of think through, and what I'd love to have you think through is selling custom even in packages, right? Where you have this like small bite kind of package, which is like light custom. Maybe you change a stone or something along those lines. You have your signature package, which is going to be more your like full custom where they get, you know, really your brain on a project, for example. And then I love to, you know, what I teach in the framework we talk about is a mega offer, right? Like it's this custom with all of like the bells and whistles where you have all, and we'll talk a little bit about this in step 4, but where you have all of these little extras that don't necessarily cost you more, but really, really cater to someone who's time crunched, for someone who is really sentimental and wants some of these extras. So when you can have these 3 different ways you're doing custom, you're moving away from someone saying, am I going to work with Liz or not, into, oh, at what level am I going to work with Liz? So that's one thing around, none of this will be standard. The markup won't necessarily be standard, but I am a huge fan of taking a deposit, and it doesn't need to be like a design deposit that then gets taken out of the formula kind of later, but it can be, hey, my custom design for my signature package starts at $2,500. Once you pay the deposit, it goes towards this project. And then we'll discuss, you know, the details. I hear that you don't want to go over $10,000 for this budget or something along those lines. But I think that we can, like there is more freedom and more flexibility than I think a lot of designers really think.
Yeah, definitely. And same with your one of a kinds. If you feel like you spent more time on a specific piece because you were learning a new skill or doing something really creative with it, mark that up more. And you don't have to necessarily articulate that it's more expensive because it's one of a kind, but definitely pay yourself for all of that work you did for that piece.
100%. And I think don't be afraid of charging these higher prices, because sometimes there's this lizard brain we all have, right? And some like behavioral psychologists call it we're kind of Russian dolls, right? We're like these nesting boxes, and we think we're very sophisticated people on the outside, but we're not. We're like very primal on the inside. So, and I love that the comment came in at the very beginning of this conversation was, when I raised my prices, I actually sold more. And it's truly just a behavioral psychology element of people don't value what they can get at this low price point. So if you're selling, even sterling silver at a low price point, people will look for what's wrong with it. They'll say, oh, it can't be real, or it must be plate, or a real person couldn't have made this. This pricing doesn't compute. So it's really, really this idea of when we start to raise our prices, we actually start to trigger more value or more perceived value in our clients and our collectors. They actually can also start to respect you more. It's kind of wild, but it is truly effective.
Yeah, I think I don't know if now's the time we want to kind of speak to raising prices, but I think that sterling silver artists, especially who have dabbled in gold and are moving towards gold, have a really hard time with pricing. I think it's really challenging for them to figure out how to comfortably talk about both aspects of their collection, or also just like have the mindset to move forward to be talking about a $5,000 pendant versus their $2,000 pendant that they're comfortable selling.
Mm-hmm. And it's like a journey. It's really a journey. And I think that there's two ways to do it. You can do the BandAid method, which is like sunsetting all sterling silver, right? Sunsetting your like lower designs and making a big pivot. And really announcing your pivot and having it be really celebratory that you have this new line. Jocelyn from Lot 28 is a really great example of like, she's like announced this like fine jewelry line that she's doing and she's all in on. So that's like one way.
I'm excited. Sorry. I missed that announcement from her and now I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's beautiful, her work. So you can do like a really big announcement, kind of bring people on that journey. Or you can just slowly start to remove sterling silver pieces. And that is a way you can do it too. And I think that we feel that we need more transparency sometimes than we really do. Like people are not paying very close attention. If you have some, this is, again, to kind of use this like cheesy language, this really is a journey. You will have some people who stay with you on this upward spiral that you're into. And you will have people who won't. They will be sterling silver buyers and they'll go elsewhere, and that's okay. One thing to help the clients I work with as they do this pivot into kind of the higher end, what we'll talk a lot about is save some sterling pieces aside, and you can do occasional like flash availability for them and kind of hype that up and do this more an inclusive moment. Or you can do a small run of like 20 pieces of your most popular sterling silver collection. So you have this element of limited edition-ness to what you're doing, but you can just kind of slowly start to sunset some of the pieces as well. Does that answer your question, Liz? It was a really, really great one.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's also just being confident in higher prices, which we're going to get into in number 2. But real quick, Jira asked a question that I know both you and I agree on. Do you announce an overall price raise to your clientele? And we're both in the mindset, Kathleen and I, that you don't have to announce that. Even if it's a significant one. A lot of people this year looked at metal costs and raised their prices 15%, 20% because of the cost of silver and the cost of gold. But that's not necessarily something you need to be transparent about with your clients. That's something you can just do.
100%. And Liz, as we were preparing, we had a funny moment of like, I was telling Liz, one of my favorite cafes literally had like erased, but hadn't erased completely the old prices and just had new prices over it. They didn't announce it. And I didn't mind that my latte was now, $4 versus $3.50. So it's, again, this difference of zeros, your percentage increase might be more, but know that if someone really wants it, that especially with the affluent client, they're not going to be turned off by a $500 increase, by a $2,000 increase. Maybe they'll notice that. Some of your older people who've been with you might give you some objections, which we like to kind of rephrase, are just questions. They might say, oh, I thought this was this price. And you have, what I love to call this high-end comeback of saying, yes, we've raised our prices due to, metal prices. My accountant, we've committed to, it's a great selling point, right? Like we've recommitted to using only fair mine gold. We're working directly with the mines, like we're donating a percentage to charity. We gave all of our metalsmiths a raise. whatever that is that you can kind of like spin into a really positive element. And you have this high-end comeback that says, but because you're such an amazing repeat customer, I'd be happy to honor the prices you saw before. Another good thing is learning to, if you're quoting custom, for example, giving people 10 days to decide, and then the quote is mute, right? Like the quote is gone at a certain point because of the volatile metal market. And looking at adding that into your contracts, like having that really as part of the language that you're saying to let people know. And I think that this is just this like element of continuing to become a more and more professional business really as well.
Yeah, and one more thought before we move to number 2, which I think you'll also agree with me. And I think that in general, I just want to say that we get really caught up in our heads about pricing, making it more complicated than it needs to be in a lot of cases. But Katie's saying that she's curious about pricing collections differently and having them next to each other on their website. So say she has a $900 piece next to a $90 piece, and feeling like customers might perceive that in an odd way.
It's a good question. And there is I love to like move out of industry for this, for talking about this, because there is an element, and I'll just kind of introduce you for those of you who don't know, I have a belief that is that we can step into a high-end spiral, which is when we're charging higher prices. We feel really good when an order comes in. We can spend more time with our clients so they get, they're happier, they feel more seen, heard, and acknowledged. And that's the upward spiral. And the downward spiral is when you are undercharging. So even when you get an order, you feel resentful because you're getting paid $10 an hour to produce a piece. Maybe you can't even outsource it because you can't afford to outsource it. Your clients, sometimes the lower end clients are more difficult to work with, which is kind of one of those crazy things that you won't believe it until you're in that experience. So that's to just like frame the perspective where I'm coming from this, hearing this question. But when we have a $90 piece next to a $900 piece, it's kind of like walking into a restaurant where there is, a $9 hamburger and like a $90 seafood tower. And maybe there's some other things that feel kind of like lower end, and then some like really high end things as well. And you're probably not going to buy those higher end items off the menu. But if a hamburger, for example, is like $30, you know what kind of restaurant you're walking into. You know that you're going to spend $150 to $200 by the time you're done eating there. So when we have really, and again, this comes back to those two different techniques where we can like announce and slowly sunset our products, or we can kind of just make a clean break of it. When we are sunsetting products, you might have some of that like market confusion, which Katie brought up, where someone says, oh, well, I could just get this in sterling for $90. Why would I pay $900? So at a certain point, you might start to actually slowly sunset some of your sterling, some of your lower price point, and just make that commitment to that upper end. And like one thing I want to make sure that everyone here knows is you can still work in sterling silver and have $500 price points. You can have, $1,000 price points in sterling silver. And I think that sometimes as jewelers, we get so fixated on this, but like think of artists, right? Like painting, for example, if you paint on canvas, you could use like lower end material and still the end result could be $50,000. So it really isn't necessarily about the material. It's about your own confidence. It's about understanding your pricing structure. It's about understanding the craftsmanship and kind of where you are in the larger conversation and what your muse or your affluent client really, really cares about and wants, because it doesn't need to necessarily only be precious metals and, huge gemstones.
Yeah, that's great. So like something that you could think about doing if you are in that situation is moving the lower price points to a different portion of the website so they're not next to each other, or a different collection. Or you could even think about elevating those prices a little bit and maybe have higher margins on the lower price point items, just to kind of make everything feel like it's working together a bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's your I don't know if you know this, Liz, but I have a black belt in karate. So I use a lot of like dojo references. It's your dojo, right? Like it's your space. And I think that when you think of your website, when you think of your online presence, or if you have a physical location, it's your place to make these decisions. It's your restaurant, like kind of whatever analogy that feels slightly out of industry makes the most resonant sense with you. But if you have a restaurant, you might change your prices, or you might have specials that are quite really good margins, or you might be, sunsetting things and bringing new things on. And as a patron of restaurants, I don't mind when they do that, nor do I even notice. So just starting to think of that for yourself as well. And if I said to, I have a local restaurant that I love, if I said, hey, I thought this hamburger used to be, $20 and now it's 25, they might say, oh, Kathleen, because you're a good customer, I'm happy to give you a good discount. So just know that you can have these in your pocket of ways to do this beautiful high-end comeback as well.
This is a topic I feel like the silver gold conversation is a topic I feel very comfortable in, like I could talk about forever, but a lot of designers are afraid of letting go of the lower price point for fear that they will make their collection not accessible to their clients, that they'll lose out. But we talk about this a lot. The more niche you are, the more you lean into what you really want your company to be, what you really want to be selling, the more you'll sell truly.
100%. And I think that having some of these techniques, and like this is like the real practical pieces of this conversation, like having those techniques of if you sunset something, that you can bring it back around the holidays, or do a special run for Valentine's Day, or do a special run in conjunction with a charity. I have a client, Melissa, who did an incredible job working with a charity. She's based in Vancouver, and she worked with this incredible like transgendered youth shelter. And she did a custom piece in conjunction with another person, but it was a custom piece, and she sold a lot in gold, but she did a silver run. She did 30 in silver too. And those sold out as well. And I think she raised something like 5 figures for this charity, like really, really incredible. But now she has that in her back pocket because she's pretty much sunset most of her sterling silver work. And she also has a really great story about how a client moved up with her. A client who was a sterling silver buyer kept moving up with her. So we never can assume that as we step into this upward spiral of raising our prices, that people won't just come along for the ride. So I think it's a true fear. And I think this is where we need to start to like really understand emotions with money and divorcing our own bank accounts when we start to look at raising our prices, which brings us to point 2 and 3. They're all at this point, like point 2 and 3, which is coming up with a plan of what you're going to say and how you're going to self-soothe when your friends and family like tell you they can't afford your stuff anymore, or when you have that moment, because it will happen. Like just like objections happen when you're selling, and we wish they wouldn't, but they do. This moment will happen too, where your family says, oh my God, I can't believe you charged that. Or your friends or family say this. So starting to come up, and this is why the very first step is knowing your numbers, knowing what you need to take home, really feeling very confident in, I charge high prices because I work with local designers, I pay them well, I pay top dollar for recycled metals, like having some of those slightly scripted, and not defensive, right? We're not justifying our prices here, but we're simply educating our friends and family. And they might not be our muses, right? Like they might not be our ideal clients. So I like to say we only take advice from those who are on the court with us. Like Liz and I are on the court with you guys. This is a room full of people who are on the court. So when we have people who are not going to buy from us giving us advice, we can say, thank you for your opinion. And then we can kind of let that go and brush that off. What are your thoughts, Liz? I love this kind of like idea of how to think of sunsetting things, raising prices, and how to deal with the ups and downs of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I felt a little triggered when you were talking about family commenting, and I'm not even a jewelry designer, but having worked for high-end jewelry designers for over 10 years, and showing people who I'm supporting and who I'm working with, and them saying the pieces are too expensive, I could never afford that. Like, it makes me feel uncomfortable and sad a little bit, because, you're not who I'm selling to, unfortunately. And as a 30-something, many of my peers are artists and can't afford a lot of the pieces I sell or the designers I work with. And that's okay. And that's something we just like need to be okay with, and trust that the client is out there. And that's, a lot of this goes, pricing, marketing, selling, it all goes hand in hand. Branding. If somebody wants your product and can afford it, they're going to buy it. So, I think that it's really important to understand who you're trying to sell to and trust that they're out there and trust that you're connecting with them through your brand.
Mm-hmm. And I always give people full permission to let go of, not from a personal standpoint, but on social media, other artists who you feel like are like kind of that gut triggering for you when you are sharing what you're up to now, friends and family, random people from high school, uncles, grandparents, whoever you need to like have a conversation with and say, hey, my social media, we're just turning it into more of a business place. So I am, either I'm going to not be connected with you in this way online, like giving you permission to let people. And I think the more we can really think of our online presence as this physical store, you wouldn't want your like uncle hanging around your physical store telling people your things were too expensive. So if you have these comments that are coming up and are like hyper triggering, and you wouldn't want another jeweler who feels like really scarce mindset, like standing in your store and like glaring at customers who are coming in. So giving you that full permission. But as Liz said, to feel the feelings, like we can't, like this conversation isn't about like stuffing down these feelings that come up. It's truly about processing these feelings, having tools. I'll do a plug. I don't think we'll have time to do any tapping together, but this book, Tapping for Wealth by Margaret Lynch, and she has a lot of YouTube videos, but like starting to have a practice where you can process some of these emotions that come up. I love that you just shared that, Liz, because I'm sure everyone in the room has felt that as they've shared prices or moved into this upward spiral, or even as you're selling higher price point things. Like that time I had to say, and that will be $32,000. Like that was a moment that I'll never forget, because it was so visceral to be like, that's a lot of money. Like, oh my God.
But for that, yeah.
But for him, it wasn't. Like for him, it was something he had saved up. He had thought about it. And if I had kind of like prejudged him for that, then the sale wouldn't have happened. So the more we can start to, like, it always comes back to divorcing ourselves from our own bank accounts, our family's bank accounts, our friends' bank accounts, and truly knowing that there are people out there who are spending at this level.
Yeah. And something we mentioned in point 2 is that practice saying these prices out loud. It gets so much easier. And granted, right now, you might not be able to go to a trunk show or be at an event saying your prices, but that's good because you have more time to practice. It's the worst feeling is when you're in a situation where somebody asks you your price and you feel uncomfortable saying the price. So practice that stuff now. Do a video and send it to me. I'm glad to take a look at you practicing saying your pricing, and I'm glad to support you in that. But say it in the mirror, talk about it, anywhere, to your dogs. Sometimes I talk to my dogs when I'm talking about pricing or practicing my elevator pitch or anything like that, getting ready for a webinar. You have to practice somewhere. So I think it's really important to like feel really comfortable. And I mean, $10,000 for a gold bracelet is totally reasonable. Coming back to that example I was talking about earlier today. And if you are feeling like that's an insane number, look at other websites. Look at Todd Reed's website. Look at Twist online, just because they have a huge variety of designers that they sell at a huge variety of price points. And get really comfortable that what you're selling is either on point or probably in a lot of cases, as you're looking, priced much lower than some of the other designers out there.
I love that. And I think it's important to, like, I love reading Town and Country because they're such high-end jewelry. I love reading Vogue because they have such amazing placements of jewelry. Like the more you can start to browse like $1 million listings on, and like look at charities that, people in your community are on, like the more we can start to understand like affluent buying psychology. And to bring it back to this $10,000 bangle example, if it was priced at $2,000, someone might be looking for what's fake there, like what is not real about this. And it's hard when, in my bank account, I'm not buying a $10,000 bangle. Like, and again, it's not even about being able to afford it. It's about priorities. And I think that that's something to just continue to, like, I just want to give everyone in the room like balm to soothe themselves with as they're on this journey which is that, you might not choose to spend your money this way, not necessarily because you can't afford it, but because you're choosing different priorities. So your clients might have different priorities than your family members do. For example, someone who couldn't ever imagine spending $10,000 on a bangle, for example, they might spend $10,000 or easily spend $10,000 on a mountain bike, right? Or on a vacation. So it's truly about understanding that people have different priorities. Your jewelry is not for everyone. There's plenty of jewelers out there who can continue to service those people, but your jewelry is really only for a certain percentage of people who care about your niche and who care about fine artisan jewelry. So I think the more you can really start to identify, and when you move into that high-end cycle, you only need to have like 40 amazing clients who love you and refer you to everyone they know to have $1 million business, like to have a really, really incredible business.
And that's such a great point to mention, is that a lot of times we designers come into this industry thinking, oh, I just need to sell so much jewelry. I just need to sell all of this jewelry and then I'll be good. But really the fine jewelry industry and art jewelry industry, you're really working relationship based. And that's how all of these great established designers started. Like even someone like David Yurman, he started making one connection, selling one piece, and then selling, that person referring him, selling two pieces. Like it starts really slow. And I think that that's something, if you are watching this and you're an emerging designer and you're like, okay, well, I feel like I'm not getting started. I don't know who to be selling to. Like start small, start really small. And I know that's not quite the point you were making there, but I think that it's really important to remember that we're selling something that people don't need and something that's very valuable. And it's not like you're going to put up a website and suddenly have a huge slew of orders.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more.
And it's like exactly what I'm talking about. I love that we're like having this conversation. Just so you guys know, we always have notes, Liz and I, and then we're like, all right, we're going to go off topic. Because this is almost point 4, which is all about like affluent buyer psychology. And I think I love this quote from Seth Godin, which is, we don't need to out Amazon. And I think that it's so easy when you are an emerging designer or even an established designer looking to go online. You're like, okay, I'm going to do the e-commerce game. I need to get 100 pieces online. Or I was part of a business, we had 10,000 pieces online, which is insane. But I think that you feel like, okay, I need to have everything online. I need to have something for everyone. I need to be the Amazon. But really, if you can kind of go the opposite way and go super high touch and really small, like really take exquisite care of your clients, then you do only need like 5 people. And I have a client, Christine, and she's incredible. She's in the DC area. She's been in business for about 20 years. She's like, Kathleen, I can trace back the entire success of my 20 years to like 5 friends and family. They started me out, they gave me referrals, I took great care of them. And I can basically like look at this linear tree of all of them. And I think it can be really easy to discredit that and feel like you don't have a real business if you're selling that way. But you do. Like that's as real of a business as it can be. Like I always love to say, your network is your net worth. So if you are taking, really, really good care of the current friends and family who are coming to you, that's where they'll tell their friends, and then you'll be, at a cocktail party sometime. Or I think Christine told me a story once. She was like at a family gathering and she was like, I looked around and like 10 women were wearing my designs. Like how incredible is that? So it really is knowing that as you step into this high end, it's less about mass marketing and like sell, and more about making more with every single sale that you make.
Yeah. And nurturing those clients, even, if you're sterling silver based now and you're looking to transition to gold, nurturing your sterling silver collectors and helping them move with you, or just nurturing them in general will make them want to move with you as they can afford it. So clienteling, I mean, it always comes back to clienteling, doesn't it, Kathleen?
If you hang around me enough, it always comes back to clienteling. But and it's less about like, I truly believe that this is like a movement. This is like something I care so deeply and strongly about as like a big global, and it's less about clienteling and when we look at it this way, but the best clients are the ones you have. like if you had 500 new orders, could you even handle it? Like, could you take exquisite care of all of those people? And I think we're in this moment in a cultural, like to look from a cultural lens where it's like more and more and more. I want more things and more fast food and more Instagram followers and more options on Netflix. And I think that there's a whole movement that I feel that I'm deeply a part of, which is like, how can I really, really understand quantity over quality? No, quality over quantity. I always mix that up, but like that quality matters to so many people and connection matters to so many people. And this kind of philosophy and movement I truly believe in speaks so much to the artists in this room and the small retailers in this room of if you had permission to charge very high prices, work on fewer pieces, and deepen the relationships with the people on the other end of the screen or the other end of the bench, for example, then they couldn't stop talking about you because you really made them feel seen, heard, and acknowledged. So, you know, I really believe in clienteling one, but like true, authentic connection, I think is like the thing people are craving the most. You see it in private medicine now, like private medicine is having a resurgence. Concierge, everything is happening. My husband started working with a personal trainer and he's like, well, I'll never go to a group class again because this person chooses for me. Like instead of having all of the options, I think we're in a moment where people are hungry for less options, which I think really starts to talk about the psychology of the affluent buyer. They really want you to like kind of do the choosing for them and you to be this trusted advisor and like real genuine friend as well.
Definitely. And when I'm looking at brands that I'm really connecting with right now, their product offerings are really small. They might have 4 styles in 10 different colors each, or, you know, just really consistent and just really small product offering, which I've just found fascinating all year because those are the brands I keep connecting with. And whenever I see something with endless options, I struggle and I usually close out of that website and or add a few things to cart and then leave because I'm overwhelmed.
I love that, Liz. And it's so true. I feel that same way on Netflix, on Amazon Prime. Like we have, and I think that this is this belief I have around this movement that like Liz is obviously on the forefront of it because she is trendsetter extraordinaire, but it really is. I think that we're going to keep pivoting this way where people want less options, where we feel so overwhelmed with choice, so overwhelmed with Amazon, kind of to go back to that Seth Godin quote, so overwhelmed with like Amazon. We can't out Amazon. They're doing a great job. So if we can kind of go flip the script completely and go our totally own way, where we have 3 things on offer, where we have 5 signature styles, whatever that looks like for you, that's really where you can connect with that more affluent client as well.
So anything else to add about topic 4? I feel like we've covered a huge like landscape of topics, kind of lightly.
We'll definitely have to have a part 2.
We're gonna have to, as always.
We'll have a part 2. I think we should do it where we do a webinar where we put people paired together and they have to talk about their highest, like what price makes them nauseous and start to say that out loud. But one thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap up, and I think there's some really great questions in the chat, is that you can't sell what's not on the menu. So as you're stepping into this high end, you know, sphere, you can't sell things that are not currently there. So the more that you can start to envision and imagine these like high, what would a $50,000 price point look like for you? What would a $100,000 piece look like for you? And the constraint is that it can't just be all in the diamond, for example, or all in the like phenomenal stone, but what would you do with that commission, right? If someone said, hey, I have a $20,000 engagement ring, can you create this for me? Or I have a, $50,000 budget. Could you handle that? Could you start to kind of like in your mind, start to envision what that would be? And then starts to set a date. By December, I'll have designed, and you don't even have to have produced it yet, right? Like there is this idea with crowdfunding. That's the word, like not GoFundMe. But what is the website, Liz, where they basically sell you on the idea? What was that?
Yeah. Crowdsourcing.
Crowdsourcing. Yeah. There's all the websites. I'm sure you guys have, I feel like I always am like, oh, I want to be part of this. And they get early ordering or they get this opportunity.
Kickstarter. That's it.
Kickstarter. Yes. Thank you. Kickstarter. So start to think of how you can pre-sell, right? Like start to talk about this design you're coming up with, start to bring people on this journey as you're selling at this higher price point, because you will never sell what is not on the menu. So it's really about, and again, we've given you so many techniques of potentially slowly sunsetting, potentially really coming out with this full line, letting people know sterling silver will be gone, keeping it in your back pocket to do small runs with. But I think I love the comment we opened with this conversation, which is, as I raise my prices, I actually sell more. And that's what we see really again and again.
Yes, definitely. And if you missed any of the points, there'll be a recap coming out with the replay of this tomorrow. So fear not.
Yes. So I'll just run through the points though. Georgia, you're with the babe. So I'm glad you're tuning in. This is great. Like family business, right? Your baby's getting like inundated by Liz and I right now. It's good watching. But the very first point is know your true costs and make sure you're not charging wholesale prices if you're selling direct to collector. The second point is to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So really start to understand what your own bank account is, that it doesn't equate to your collector's bank account, starting to really understand what it will feel like if your friends and family say, I can't believe you raised your prices. So start to really know that it's okay to be uncomfortable. The third point is you can't sell what's not on the menu. So we have to start working towards some of these higher price points, whatever that edge is for you. As I said, some of those numbers, your stomachs might have dropped. So kind of tune into your body of what is that like next big leap for you, which would represent kind of this mega offer. And then the fourth part is really starting to understand the psychology of the affluent, that they don't need more choices, that that special touches go a really long way. It doesn't necessarily have to be bigger, better stones, but really the best clients are the ones you have. So if you can have this consistent practice of realizing there are people out there who value so much quality over quantity, those are your people, right? Those are the people who will buy from you, recommend you, and love to support you. So that's a
great.
quick recap.
That's a great recap. Should we get to some questions? Were there any that we answered a few as we were going along?
Okay, perfect.
But were there any that jumped out at you that you wanted to answer? And then also feel free to leave a question. There's one about wholesale. We weren't planning to touch on wholesale, but with a wholesale price increase, just in general, you will have to have more communication. And I would say just like the key to that is communication. Just that, like explaining why you're raising your prices to your wholesale clients, like writing a nice email or giving them a call, and announcing a date that you're going to raise those prices if they need to get any orders in beforehand or anything like that. But that's a whole different kind of mindset and different conversation. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
100%. And I think you can say, I'm having a new collection that's not available to wholesale. Like I think the wholesale and direct to collector conversation is a big one. And I think I'm a big fan of taking exquisite care of your wholesale, right? So really making sure that you have fewer wholesale that you can take really great care of. So you would just be in communication with them. You could tell them that they could have, you would do, I'm raising my prices, but what I'll do for you is do Instagram live every quarter for you, or like they want sell through. So if they have, raised prices that are then going to have to reflect in their prices, what else can you do that will really help them and make it feel like a win-win? And also no, not every wholesale, just like not every client will be with you on this journey, not every wholesale account will be with you on this journey. And you need to kind of determine what you feel comfortable with kind of losing and what you don't feel comfortable losing, because that's really the like place where I want you to come from pricing, is that it's okay if a client says no to you. It's not your worth. It's simply they have priorities in a different spot. Maybe they're going on a trip. Maybe they're buying a mountain bike or a kayak or they have their son's tuition for preschool that's due, and they've decided to just go in a different direction. Hearing no, even if it's in the direct to collector space, is totally fine as well. Awesome. So did that answer it, Liz? Do you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, just no, that was great. Yeah, just to reiterate, if a wholesale client isn't wanting to stay with you as you transition into what you really want to be doing, that's okay. To just be comfortable with that type of change. Jira is wondering, do you think that you should announce any designs you're sunsetting? I love that that beautiful terminology. It's so visual, but like, do you give a last chance to buy? I would say it depends if you have inventory or not.
Mm-hmm. I love that answer, Liz. And that's the biggest thing. Like, if you have inventory, let's keep it up. Let's like keep selling it. But I think you can do this in so many creative ways. You can sunset it from your website and do an Instagram live that this is exclusive. Like, and I think this is something that we teach in the group program I run on the High End Jeweler Society, which is having this like really high end word wardrobe that you can start to sprinkle over. So it's like, this is an exclusive design. This is a one of a kind piece. This was popular, and we're sunsetting it. So this is your last chance to buy. Like some of these words that really elevate it. So it's not like we're getting this off the menu, but we're really like, this is really an incredible piece that I love. And you can come up in stories. You could do some highlights of it. I don't think you need to. And again, this is like, I don't know what goes on in restaurants. I don't know their pricing. Like, it's not transparent what they're bringing and when they're going to take things away. I'm a patron of that restaurant. One of my favorite restaurants has these amazing hamburgers on the menu. Sometimes they're on the menu. Sometimes they're not on the menu. Like, I don't get to know. Sometimes they'll tell us if it's going to be on the menu because we like all rush there as a community to go eat them. But no one needs an explanation. I hope that makes sense and that doesn't feel demeaning towards your clients. But it's your dojo. You get to kind of do what it is that feels correct for you.
Yeah, just if you're done making that design and you want it gone, don't just let it go, sort of thing.
100%. And like, again, it's like, I feel sounds cheesy when I say it, but it is so much about tapping into your body. Like if you have, I've had clients I've worked with, they're like, Kathleen, I got a feeling of dread when that design, when I hear that ding ding of someone buying or someone inquires about a piece, I get a literal feeling of dread. I hate making it. I don't make enough money. It takes too long. Those are the first things to sunset, right? Like those are the pieces because it's so hard. And that's that downward spiral, right? Where you get an order, but you don't make enough money. So you resent and you put like, to go crazy woo here, you put bad energy into that piece, not intentionally even, but you have that like feeling of resentment. So you can't take exquisite care versus when you're being paid like extremely well, every time you get that money, you're like, oh, yay, now I'm so excited. And I can really be there for this person on the other end.
Yeah. Even if that's a bestseller, a lot of times that cringy piece is a bestseller or something that's really moving. But if it's not feeling good for you to make, if you're not making the income you want to make from it, or if it just doesn't feel like a part of your collection anymore, or the direction you want to be going, it's totally okay to let that go and try something new. So kind of similarly, this is a question I get often. If you have a really great client who wants to do something, they've collected your pieces, but they want to do something completely different and work with you on a custom piece that's not in line with what you want to be creating. How do you nicely say no? Do you have to say yes to that? Can you say no?
I love this question, and it's perfect. And this really comes into when we have a 5-step process that we walk our students and clients through around creating their packages. And giving people permission to like sunset custom, for example, like just to not do custom at all. Like you have permission to do that. Like it is your space. It is your business. So first of all, you can say no to custom in general. But if someone comes to you with a totally different style that isn't in line with you, or is potentially copying someone else's work, or you just don't think will like aesthetically look good, or even physically work. Like, I think that happens a lot. Like people think, and especially because custom's so trendy right now, people like have a lot of thoughts of how that they could be a jeweler too. And like, as jewelers with so many years of experience, sometimes, like, actually that just won't work. It's super okay to say no. And two, I love to pull in another out of industry example here, but it's like going to the hairdresser. Like that hairdresser is the authority in that relationship. So I can come in and say, you know, my hair is quite fine. So I could come in and like and I don't really do much to it. Like it's currently curled, but usually like day to day running around with my toddler, it's like air dried, nothing going on. So I could come into my hairdryer with this or my hairdresser with a really complicated thing that I wanted. And I told her the reality of my situation. And she'd be like, Kathleen, I have to steer you away from that. And if I said, no, this is really, really what I want. Oh, this actually happened. Here's a real story. I wanted bangs. I was like, I want bangs. Lauren, my hairdresser, like, I think bangs would be cool. How awesome. I'm seeing so many of my friends have amazing bangs. And she's like, Kathleen, like you have a really big cowlick. Like, no bangs. Like I've seen your pictures from 6th grade, like no bangs. And I could have done one of two things. I trust her, so I believed her, or I could have really pushed. And she would have had to, at that point, say, okay, do you truly understand? Like she'd have to look me in the eye. She wouldn't have me sign a contract because it's not that type of relationship, but she'd have to say, okay, Kathleen, like I can do this for you, but I don't think you're going to like it. And here's why. Or she could say no. You know, she would have that, like, I'm sorry, I can't let you leave this chair not feeling good. So you have that permission too. If someone comes to you, you can either take on the job whilst explaining there are no returns, right? At what level is there no returns of this project? If it's a custom, what contract are they signing? What is non-refundable? What is non-exchangeable? So if you have that explicit conversation with them, it's documented somehow in writing, then you can move forward with it if you choose. Does that make sense to you? I feel like I got a little convoluted in my hair story.
Yeah, no, I think it totally does. I would say in this particular question, yeah, steer them towards the direction that you do. It's also okay to say, even though they are a great client, say like, you know, I really only work in this specific aesthetic. Let me take your idea and translate it and maybe pitch you a design.
100%. And like, this is especially when you're working with more and more affluent clients, you might find that you have a bit of a tug of war. I think Doris just said they want to be the designer and micromanaging every bit of the process, as well as the bangs with the stylist, right? Thank you. I know bangs are just for what's going on, not a great idea for me. But you have to be the one leading the conversation. You have to be the one saying no when it's no, and start to think of other out of industry examples. I think sometimes as designers, we want to be really flexible and we want to make the sale, for example. But if you were to go to your auto mechanic and say, you know, sometimes people want to bring, like I've in the past, if there's something expensive, be like, hey, I want to source my own piece for this job. And sometimes they say, no, like I'm the authority. I don't do that. You can go elsewhere. So if you can start to bring some of that, and it's less about attitude, that doesn't sound quite right, but it's like, if you can bring that alpha-ness to the relationship of I'm the one in charge, I love your ideas, like very kind, obviously, I love your ideas, but let's go in this different direction, as you just said, Liz. Like that's really where you'll get the respect, because otherwise, like that is the downward spiral. If they're micromanaging you and like total red flag clients, that's something else we have our clients do, is like start to identify those red flags of like what you start to know at the beginning, which like won't end well. Start to identify those and feel comfortable saying no. You really have to act like there's 20 clients in the wings, right? Like there's always going to be more clients coming your way. So you can comfortably say no. And then sometimes when you say no, that's when they're like, they respect you and now they want to pay your top dollar for them. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, Liz, but I've had that happen to me before.
I have all the time. I've experienced that quite often, actually. But here's maybe a good question to end on. How do you speak to a client of many years who has made many purchases, custom and not, who always asks for a discount? And maybe speak more broadly also to people, designers, coming back to something I mentioned in the beginning, designers who always feel like they need to quickly offer a discount to make the sale.
I love this question, and there's two prongs to it, which is that some people love a discount. Like there are some cultures that are haggling cultures. There are some people who feel very special if they get a discount. What I advise you is to mark up, and actually in the pricing calculators we use internally, there's a pricing point that says markup 15% for potential discounting. So whatever that percentage is for you, knowing that that margin is already taken care of, to potentially discount. Like that happens. So that's the first answer. Build it into your pricing so you can, like, if you're on the wholesale level, you can bulk discount, you can give, you know, your special clients this little bonus occasionally. These people, especially, you know, as George was saying, always ask for a discount. You can honor it by increasing your prices for that particular person. And that's the first answer of the question. And then the second prong is that don't be quick to ask for discounts. Like, you know, obviously George is speaking of a really specific instance where someone has already asked for a discount and is kind of conditioned in that way. So it's harder to break that without losing the relationship. You can obviously explain it to them. You're no longer doing that, or throw in something else for, you know, like, I think it's starting to figure out what their why is and honoring that instead of a monetary discount potentially. But it's really easy, especially as you're raising prices, to hear an objection around price, or like a moment where you say the price and the person on the other end says, whoa, I didn't expect it to be that much money. And then you're like, I'll discount it. And that's what the habit we want to prevent you from getting into, because sometimes they just need to align with the price. And the biggest thing about dealing with objections is connecting it, one, to their why. So you're showing them you're deeply listening, but two, like figuring out what the objection truly is about. Because is it that it's more expensive than they thought it was? Or do they just need a moment to kind of think about it, or wire money to a different account, or move something around, or speak to a spouse? So I think it's really easy. I find that, and Liz, is this what you find too, in that moment of saying the price, you basically say the price and then like apologize for the price by discounting?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like that. I tend to, what I tend to do when that happens to me, more so in person, but I tend to start explaining why the piece is so special. That's what I lean on versus the discount, because usually I don't even have authority to discount because I'm selling somebody else's work. But talking about why it's so special and like diving into like, you know, the value, the actual value of the piece, or the emotional value of the piece.
100%. I love that, Liz. And it's like, almost pretend you don't have the authority to discount, right? Like it's kind of this, like,
We don't have the authority to discount. Kathleen and I are not
away
giving
your
you
authority
the authority to discount.
but you can, like, and again, this is your world. Like, think of like, it's your dojo. Like, think of, I'll have to speak with my accountant, something like that. Like, I just, you know, I don't have the authority to discount this piece. It is such a phenomenal piece. Like, without justifying it, I think it's a fine line between like, and this is why, you know, objections can be, you know, we're going to do Liz, you and I can talk forever, because dealing with objections is something that I think as you move into the higher end realm of things, you need to just get more and more comfortable with objections, dealing with objections, feeling comfortable with objections, not needing to justify if an objection comes up, but really just, as you're saying, Liz, so beautifully, like explaining the value. I work with small artisans, you know, how so? You think this is expensive? How so? Compared to what? Like those kind of things, and really always connecting it back to their why, like showing them that you've been really listening to them.
Yeah, so it's getting dark here and I don't have my lighting situation ready. So we're gonna have to wrap. Also, Kathleen and I could literally talk forever. And I think this is how we end every single webinar.
Literally talk forever.
Like, let's do another part. So I'll be in touch about that.
We'll do part F next. I feel like we have so many parts, but I think that it's really about, I think tell us some red flags. It's like understanding your own red flags. Like there is nothing. And I think that if you felt like coming to this pricing webinar, you felt like you'd leave with potentially more concrete information, know that there's nothing cookie cutter. It's truly about understanding your own clientele, like your muses, what they care about, what charities they care about, what pricing you need to be in, what things to highlight that they're going to really deeply care about, what red flags that are coming up for you, you know, that micromanaging example, some other things that really are like boil your blood or you don't like to work with, and giving you permission to start to say no to those people. And then it gives you that room to say yes to the people you want. You almost sometimes need to make the space for by letting go of those people who bring you down. That sounds a little cheesy, but like by letting go of those problem clients, that's when you have the space to continue to raise your prices and find those people who are like $7,500. Oh my gosh, that's nothing. Amazing. Here's my credit card. $50,000. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Here it is. Like whatever that edge is for you, it really is. It's there for you. Clients are out there buying for sure.
What a great way to wrap this up. So, Kathleen, for everybody wondering how they could work more closely with you.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So I run a year-long program called the High-End Jewelers Society, and it's all about like, this was a tip of the iceberg. Like we spend one whole year going over all this methodology around raising your prices, clienteling, red flags, packages, all of that. And we actually have a masterclass that is application only. So if you go to my LinkedIn bio, you can apply and our team looks over your application, make sure you're a good fit. And then you get released into a masterclass, which is all about the 3 ways to fill your virtual room with affluent clients. So if you would like to take a look, learn a little bit more about how we work, go to my link in my Instagram bio and hit apply. I would love to learn more about you and where you are on your high-end journey. And we also have a virtual summit coming up in April. So it's kind of behind the scenes right now, all about high-end sales. So I will keep Liz, you informed about it, and all of you beautiful people here in this room as well.
Yeah, let me know. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. I will be in touch tomorrow with a replay, all of the notes here, how you can work with me, how you can work with Kathleen, all of that great information. So thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I wish we could just hang out with designers and just chat all day about mindset and
also I want to just like be explicit that this is not wine.
It's not, because I wasn't sure, but we support wine. I mean,
I support wine, but I have been drinking tea. I had a moment where I was like, oh, this hibiscus tea looks like wine. Well, I wish we were together, Liz, drinking wine. We were together in New York so recently. I mean, a year almost now.
About a year ago. Yeah, it's blowing my mind that the last trade show I walked was still less than a year ago.
Was it Melly in New York now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same for me.
So yeah, it's been a year, but
it's been a year.
So much opportunity.
Yes. Yes, thanks for all the love, you guys. I always feel like after these calls with Liz, because again, we have like quite a bit nothing is scripted, obviously, but we have some notes and then we always go off notes. And I'm always like, gosh, I hope that all landed well. So I love seeing this here.
Yeah, I'm excited to see everyone like confidently raise and talk about their prices. So I'm really, and also like, we're always here for support. You know, if you want to, I put Kathleen's Instagram in the chat here. I think everybody knows my Instagram, but maybe I shouldn't assume that. But like, if you just want to reach out for like a pep talk, I love giving a good pep talk. All of the designers in Stay Gold Collective know that I love giving a good pep talk. So I'm always around.
I love it. We're like your camp counselors. We're like gonna hype you up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Flora here. I met her at, and she's in the UK watching, so it's late there.
My gosh.
But I met her, I think, at New York Now or Melly last February. So
Liz and I had this amazing, now to just reminisce, like that
was
amazing
that last February
breakfast. Yeah, I was like, I was running out to get breakfast. I was like in my pajamas, just like was trying to go to this like bagel shop that was closed. So I ended up at this little cafe and I'm like sitting, thinking about journaling in my pajamas. And it's like, Liz.
I go to the same breakfast spot. It's like a block from Javits Center. I'm totally blanking on what it's called, but it's perfect for breakfast. And Kathleen was there. It was magical.
Like, sitting in the window. I was like, Liz, New York is so kismet that way. I mean, especially during trade shows, but like, it's so, I miss that. I miss that a lot.
One day we'll be back there again.
Yeah. Awesome. It already bumped up a price. I was on the fence about. Woohoo. We've got, tell us those things, you guys. That's amazing.
Yeah, let us know your wins. Totally. We want to hear all the wins.
And it really is like, I'm looking at real estate right now. Like, I think we're like looking at real estate, but it is crazy. Like if something's priced too low, I'm like, what's the matter with it? You know what I mean? And it's just psychology. If something sat on the like what's, if something's been on market for too long. So it really is like, if you leave having confidence in raising your prices, either kind of that slightly method or your new price points, you start to come out with this like higher price point, you'll be surprised how much easier it is to sell. It feels crazy, but it truly is. Finding that sweet spot for your muse, and then continuing to raise it and find new muses who are out there.
Totally. Yeah. So go on and say no more and raise your prices confidently.
I love it. Awesome, Liz. Well, always good to chat. We could chat forever. So
we could chat forever, but we'll plan another webinar and let everybody know, and we'll be back soon.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Bye. Thanks
Bye,
for
guys.
being here. Thanks, Kathleen.